What I'd like to do is just tell you a little bit about the band itself. Early part of the 18th century, we had something in this part of the country called the Great American Brass Band Movement. Because they developed new instruments that could do a lot more than the old ones that Bach's day could do, all of a sudden there became a great interest in these instruments and forming bands. It was called the American Brass Band Movement, and Penacook was part of that. The first band that was in here was a band called the Fisherville Brass Band in the 1840s. And then that morphed into another band called the Fisherville Cornet Band, which was in existence up until about the time of the Civil War. Now, when the Civil War came about, the government thought it would be a really great idea if we had a band that went out with every regiment. Well, if you stop and think about that for a minute, there's 18 regiments right here in New Hampshire. And they were authorizing 24 guys for every regiment. And so when you multiply that by all the hundreds of regiments, the government soon found out that this was not a really practical thing to do. So within a few months after the war started in the end of 1861, when they went off in August of 1861, they started thinking of ways to get out of this because they had so many people that were in these bands, they just couldn't afford it anymore. So they issued an order probably 6 months later and said, if you had been detailed from another unit, go back to your unit. If you had enlisted, and I think the enlistments for 3-year enlistments, they just let you go. Or you could join a brigade band, which was made up of 4 or 5 regiments. So instead of a band for 1,000 men, you had a band for 4,000 or 5,000 men for the brigade. So anyways, in that first band, well, let me back up for a second. One of the groups they wanted to recruit were town bands, like the band here, the Fisherville Cornet Band. Sometimes the band would enlist, all of them would enlist in the Army to go. And so the first band that came out of here was the 3rd Regiment Band. And there were several fellows, John Linehan, and I'll show you, I don't know if you've ever seen the picture of the 3rd Regiment Band. Have you ever seen the picture? It's a very famous picture, and I'll show you, I'll point out on there and whatever. So anyways, they went off, the 3rd Regiment Band, but they were only gone for about a year, and they were all dismissed. And several of the band members went back to form the Brigade Band. A lot of people, Linehan didn't go back, Brown didn't go back. They served 1 year, and that was it. They stayed home. And then the other band, as I said, some went back. Some new guys from here enlisted. Lorenzo Courier, I don't know if you've come across his name, Lorenzo Courier, who's buried up here, and we'll go up here a little bit later. I'll show you where those people are. He enlisted in, I think, I'm not sure if David A. Brown, who's on here, I'm not sure whether his name should be on there, because his name is on there, but I'm not sure if he enlisted. He sort of went the second band was sort of crazy because they were short of people and they hired people and they weren't military. And I think David A. Brown was not in the military, but I'm not quite sure. But anyways, let's see what I've been covering some of this, made just some rough notes. And from that second band, which was the 2nd Brigade Band of the 10th Army Corps, that's where the band books came from. That's where they created the band books. And those are what are famous in the country. They're so-called Port Royal band books. And by the way, Port Royal was a term that was never used during the Civil War as regards the band or the music. That was something that came up probably in the 20th century. But when they were down there, they brought music in and copied music into their books. And there were let's see, in those books there was so much music. That's why these books are really highly prized, because they're fairly complete and there's a lot of stuff. There were 136 songs divided up into 3 sets of books. And those books came back here after the war, and Brown's band, which is an after the war band, they played from that music. Now let's see if I'm just thinking, by the way, D. Arthur Brown was the 2nd leader of the 1st band, of the regiment band. Now what I have here is a picture of that band, and I thought you might be interested in, we'll go over and see what some of these guys look like.
We could go in the shade.
Yeah, let's go in the shade here. Okay. D. Arthur Brown, right there. John Linehan in the back row. That's John Linehan right there, facing to the side. Linehan, D. Arthur Brown right there. Samuel Brown right here, who was from here. And if I come on up on the other side, I'll show you the 3rd Regiment. Some of these guys were with the first band that went down. That was the 3rd Regiment band. And here are the band guys: D. Arthur Brown, John Linehan, Henry F. Brown, Samuel F. Brown. They were all part of the same family who lived right down here on Elm Street. Henry Hamilton was in the band up there. Lorenzo Currier, Flanders was in the band. Carl Krebs. Remember I told you about a letter that was written by Clara Barton? It was in regard to Carl Krebs. He had a drinking problem, and he went to what they call, I think it was a water cure establishment, where they would cure him. I don't know what they did. He died there. But anyways, I guess he got cured one way or another. But anyways, Clara Barton wrote a letter about him to John Linehan, which I was never able to find, but I saw a reference to it. David A. Brown, I don't know if he should be there or not, but he did go with the 2nd band, but the brigade band. I think he went as a hired guy. John C. Mitchell, who died very young, was in the band. So there's a lot of these guys are band guys.
Did some of these people go on to be in the Nevers band? Or
No.
became the Nevers
No,
band?
no. I love those people down. I played in Nevers band for a lot of years, and I love those people down there. Paul Giles and Priscilla, who's a dear friend of mine, and Debbie, they're great. And Priscilla and I go around and around and around because Paul, a long time ago when he was alive, they did some research and they made a mistake, because after the war there was a 3rd Regiment National Guard band, and they thought, okay, it's a continuation of the 3rd Regiment band. No, there's no connection between Nevers band and the original bands. If there were a connection, you would have to find, number one, men that played in both. You don't have that. The music? No, because the music were the Port Royal band books, which were played here by Brown's band. They didn't go into Concord. They stayed here, and D. Arthur Brown donated them. So there's no real good link. There's one guy I think played, but no, it's not connected to Nevers band. Not at all. Even I think I've got Debbie convinced. I think she believes me now, but my friend Priscilla, she still will argue with me, and I love her, so I'm not going to argue with her too much. But then, no, there's no connection to Nevers band. Not at all. Let's see. This is a lot of stuff, and if you forget everything, I don't blame you, because I have trouble myself remembering it all.
We'll buy the book.
Huh?
We'll buy the book.
Well, the book, I'm still waiting to get it published, because, and it's not strictly about Penacook. It's basically about the men. There's a lot of history about Penacook, but I did biographies. I want to know who the men were, so I looked. There were about 55 combined, and I found where every one of them was, except for one guy, and I cannot find where his remains are, no matter what. He was a guy that played clarinet. He was on a ship off of Rhode Island. In 1882, he had joined the Navy after the war. He was very despondent. It came up on the time of his wedding anniversary, and he and his wife he had a drinking problem too, and he was estranged from his wife, and I think he was going to be disciplined, or somehow they were going to do something to him. And it said he played his clarinet on a place called Fra d'Avolo, and he got up and he looked out of the sky and he checked his pockets and he jumped overboard. Now this was January of 18, and by the time they got him on board, they tried to resuscitate him, but he was dead. And what surprises me is there's nothing in the official records, and the services are pretty good about keeping records. I was in for 3 years, and I think they knew everything. But there's a record of bringing his body on board the ship and trying to resuscitate, and that's the end of it. I don't know what happened. I saw a newspaper account that said they were going to take him to Fall River, and I've been in Fall River and called, and there's no record whatsoever of him being buried. I tried everything. I cannot find what happened to him, but he's the only one out of about 55. All the rest are accounted for. A lot of them are right up here. A bunch of them are down in the Concord Cemetery. And they're all pretty much. Now, one thing I didn't mention, when the 3rd Regiment band was phased out and all the guys came home and they formed a brigade band, at that time you had a lot of band people floating around. All the regiments were. All those guys were gone. So some of them were looking for another place to play. So when you're talking about the brigade band, there were Penacook men, but there were also men from other areas, mostly from New Hampshire. There was one that came out of a Pennsylvania regiment, but they were from New Hampshire, but they might have been out of a band further south or something, so that was a real mixture. On top of that, they would hire guys for that second band. And that really makes it hard when you're trying to find information, because there are no military records about them. They just paid them. Anyhow, so a really proud history. Now, after the war, have you heard of Brown's Band?
Yes.
Brown's Band? Brown's Band was formed in 1865 after the boys came home. And a lot of the same people that played in the other bands played in Brown's Band. Brown's Band was supposed to be one of the best bands in the state of New Hampshire. And a matter of fact, I think the bandstand was somewhere around here.
Yeah.
And it eventually ended up, if you go down to the cemetery down there and go in the first entrance, you notice that it sort of comes in and there's a big area in there before you go out to where the graves are. That is where I think the bandstand eventually ended up. Now it's long gone. Brown's Band played for the Centennial in 1876. They went down to Philadelphia and played. It was a very well-known band. In 1878, they decided they were getting too old, but old in those days was a lot different than now, because now I play with people that are 70, 80 years old. In those days, those guys were only 45 or 50. Oh, we're getting old. So they decided to phase the band out, which they did in 1878. And then somehow D. Arthur Brown got possession of these band books that had been used down in South Carolina. By the way, the bands were stationed around near Charleston, South Carolina, on the islands, James Island, and there's a couple of others, I can't remember, Hilton Head Island, whatever. That's where they did their duty, both bands, for the most part, down there. And these band books are really, there were 136 tunes in these books, and they were all hand-copied into the books while they were there from roughly March of 1863 until July of 1865, and those are highly prized throughout the country. All the bands in the country know about the Port Royal band books, which eventually ended up here.
I'm just curious about that term, Port Royal. Where did that come from?
Okay, because there is a town or something called Port Royal right down there in Charlestown. Okay. Now, again, that's a term that was coined after the band, long after the band was gone, and we called them the Port Royal band books. But I think the term came up probably maybe in the 1960s, because Frederick Fennell, who was at the Eastman School of Music, got really interested in the old Civil War music, and he formed a group, and they recorded a whole lot of stuff. And we think that maybe the term originated, but it was not used. It was not used during the Civil War. But that's a town.
But it's geographic.
A geographic town, right, right. So I don't know when the books came back here, but they ended up in the possession of D. Arthur Brown. And there were 3 sets of books. First set's 1 through 50. Second set's 51 through 100. The third set's 1 through 36. And the guys carried those 3 books, so they have all the music. And it was a great sampling of music. D. Arthur Brown gave set 2 to Concord, the Historical Society in Concord. I think it was 1898. Set 3, which I've worked on a lot, was given to the Antiquarian Society in Hopkinton. And I don't know the date, but I'm assuming it's around the same time, because I think D. Arthur Brown died around 1903. The first set, which went to the archives down in Washington, D.C., nobody knows. I called the guy down there a number of years ago, and he said the only thing they had in their records, it said by transfer, but it doesn't say where they came from. So I don't know if it was D. Arthur Brown. I don't have no clue. But the first 2 sets, well, set 2 and set 3, I know that he donated them, so he had them. Any questions about any of that stuff? It's a lot of stuff, and it's hard for me to condense it. It's really hard. But you're on the map because of those books. And if you look at some of the recordings that have been made by some of the Civil War band, Port Royal music's right up there. Now, the music I've worked on, 4 of my things are on the CD that's out now. The Historical Society has it in Concord. There are 4 Port Royal tunes on there, and I did some of the notes. This is by the Wildcat Regiment Band. There's a CD that's supposed to be out now, and it has 13 Port Royal songs that I did, and it should be out any day now, and that's going to be a really good recording. We spent a lot of time with that. So that's it. This is a very interesting place. There's a lot of things happened here. A lot of things happened. There's something that's really interesting that a lot of people don't know about this, and I find it fantastic. And that's a connection of D. Arthur Brown and Weir's Beach.
Okay.
Now after.
Go ahead.
Okay. Now after the war, they started talking about reunions probably in the 1870s. But in the 1880s, they actually put something concrete in the ground. They were given land up there on the main drag of Weir's Beach. You know where all those arcade things are? Up on the other end, where you first come in. Well, I guess you can come in both ends. But there's that's where the veterans were given a tract of land So they built a headquarters building, and each regiment had its own building. And that's where the guys could go in the summertime, look out over the lake, have a beer or whatever they drank in those days, and shoot the bull about the war. So every regiment had it. Now the 3rd Regiment, their building was right next to the main headquarters building, which is still there, and I have it on here, and I don't know if we'll be able to see it. I have some old pictures. Maybe we can try again. Maybe it'll come out better. I was hoping this would be better. But anyways, the 3rd Regiment band was right next to the headquarters building. It burned in the 1920s. It's gone. There used to be a monument, a soldier, like probably a watering trough of some kind with a Civil War soldier. That got struck by lightning in that same time period back then. It's all gone. But the Veterans Building is still there. Okay. And inside of there is that picture of John Linehan that I sent you at the end of the porch shooting the bull with the guys. That picture was in there, and I said, well, can I borrow that? It's not going out of here. I said, well, can you take it down? They said, sure. So they took it down, they put it in a chair, and I photographed it a few times with a digital camera, so that's where that came from. But even beyond that, what's really interesting is as you face the Veterans Building, right here, there's like I won't call it a road, or maybe a dirt sort of gravel, and you go to the top of the hill. They bought a tract of land. A small tract of land, because it has this huge boulder on it. And they bought this whole thing. They had somebody come in, and they engraved the name of all 18 regiments on that boulder. This is 1882. They engraved all the names on there, and then a fence was erected. Well, I hope the picture, I can show it to you. There was a fence erected that looks like standing muskets, and in the corner, cannons with a cannonball. And on top of the cannonball, there's a hole so you can stick a flag in there. And you know who built that fence? D. Arthur Brown. And that's when he was the CEO of the Concord Axle Works on the other side of the bridge. And his company made that. And I don't know, I'll try on the other side again. But to me, that's well worth a trip up to the Weirs to see that.
Absolutely.
And there's your Penacook connection again.
Nobody knows.
I didn't know what.
I've been avoiding the Weirs for years now.
Well, I know I avoided too. But the veterans that Veterans Building is interesting. You go in, and that's where they all met. And but that monument at the top of the hill, geez, I don't know. There it is. There it is.
Okay. Now is that an old stereoscope?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, very old. But there it is. This is on top by the veteran. The Veterans Building is right down here, and this is on top of the hill. Let's see if I have others. There's another one. That's where the flag.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And D. Arthur Brown is in this picture. He's the 3rd one from the left.
Okay.
And maybe I have a. There's what.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, nice.
Oh, okay.
And nobody knows. Virtually nobody knows what that thing is.
Yeah.
And there it is. And that. Look at that. That's a.
There you go.
So they look like stacked muskets. And in the corners are cannons with cannonballs, and inside the cannon, like I told you, there's a hole inside the cannonball, so you can stick a flag in there. Wait a minute, I might have another one. There's a drawing of it with the flags, and those names, they come up so often.
Absolutely.
I feel like I almost know those guys.
Yeah.
After being here, I've gone to that cemetery so many times. So that's it. I don't know if it made any sense to you, but you have a real history. The musical history, really, it's really special. I was hoping, as a matter of fact, I was trying to get that band that did the recording. I was trying to get them up here. My dream was to have them come up and go into that cemetery with that open areas and play a concert. Well, Concord shot that down, and then I couldn't raise the money to bring the band up. But the fellow at Concord said, "No, we can't do that." And I'm thinking, well, why not? Oh, there's too much traffic on the street, and we wouldn't do that. We'll set you up on the field over here. Well, I would have thought, why? Well, that would have been great because all those guys are buried there, and it would have been. But we couldn't raise the money to bring them up anyway, so it's academic. But,
Well, we'll work on it.
do you want to? Maybe you've done it already. Did you want to go up to the Brown House?
Yeah.
Now, did you know that area was called Brown's Hill? Have you ever heard that term before? Some old timer told me that a long time ago. There were so many of the Brown family lived up on Elm Street. They referred to it as Brown's Hill. And then you know where John Linehan. You've been to Linehan's place. What else? I think Linehan had a store here.
Yes, his store was in this block.
It was in this block.
I believe so. That's right. I think that's what he said. Yeah, I remember. I was just reading something last night.
Are there any pictures of that building from a long time ago, like 1880 or so? Are there any pictures going back that far?
Yes.
Was there anything that said Linehan's?
I'd have to look more closely. There's
Okay.
that crock, of course.
The crock. Where's the crock? The crock I saw was the one that Carol Foss's, is it her cousin? Dawn. He lives in Hopkinton. And Don Rand. He let me photograph that crock, and I put it in my book, and that says John Linehan. And I think that must have been 1880s or 90s, because he became insurance commissioner of New Hampshire. Right. That's the position he had when he died. But I have that, and I had it. Don Randall also had a little paperweight. It looked like a little anvil, and it came from the Concord Axle Works. That guy has a museum all his own.
Oh yeah.
So fantastic stuff. But he was nice enough to let me take pictures of that. So anyways, what I was thinking, if you'd like to go up to the Brown's house, and then you want to go to the cemetery.
Yeah.
My wife always says, "Are you going to another cemetery?" No, she actually appreciates history, but she says, I don't want to go to cemeteries. I don't want to But I mean, if that's the final resting place, I like going to cemeteries.
As long as you don't have to stay there permanently.
As long as right.
After, yeah. Okay.
And by the way, when it comes to the cemetery, did you know that the south end of that cemetery is the Catholic part?
Yeah.
Yep. Right.
And John Linehan lobbied to have that piece of land for the Catholic population. And they granted it. And that's where he is.
Yes.
He's in that part. Have you seen his grave?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I just went out earlier this year to find him. It's right there. It's right
He was, those two guys were really out there, because I've seen a lot of, D. Arthur Brown did a lot of writing. Linehan was an excellent writer. He did a lot of writing. I think he got a degree from Dartmouth. He was considering the fact that he never had a formal education, he was a really bright guy. And so was D. Arthur Brown. Outstanding men. I don't know. The men of that. Oh, yeah, the other thing that I sent her a picture. John Linehan was a director of the Gettysburg battlefield. His name is on a monument. Do you know anything about the Gettysburg battle? The fact that Robert E. Lee had a cannon thing that went on for 2 hours. He was going to try. That's where Pickett was going to make the charge. At that point, up on that hill, it's called the high water mark of the Confederacy. I think it was originally called the Copse of Trees, but that's where Robert E. Lee, they sort of focused the cannon fire because that's where he was going to try to break through with his charge. And I'm sort of getting off the subject here, but what happened was they didn't realize that the cannons were having very little effect on the Federal troops. They were hunkered down and the cannonballs were going over. So when Pickett started, you have to go to Gettysburg if you haven't been there, but when Pickett started that charge, he had to come down. They had to come down a slight slope, go through an open part. There was a road in the middle there with a split rail fence. And when those guys started climbing over that split rail fence, they were cut to shreds. It was a massacre. A few made it up there. But anyways, where that cannon fire was directed, there's a big monument there now. And on the back of the monument, under the name of directors, John C. Linehan from Penacook. Now, how many people in Penacook know that except for you guys?
Not enough.
It's interesting stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you're really on the map.
Until just recently, I didn't know any of this stuff either.
Yeah. I mean, you usually don't. And what I found doing the research on the band thing is the country was small in those days, and it seems like everybody knew everybody. I mean, people here knew people in Boston, they knew people in Manchester. It was not like today where every community has a sub-community, whatever. There's just so many people. But they seem to know each other. And some of the band guys, there was a band before Sousa's band became famous. Who was that? Sometimes I have trouble with names. Who was that? Gilmore. Patrick Gilmore. He had a very famous band, probably the most famous band in the country after the Civil War, before Sousa's band. And some of the band guys played in Gilmore's band. So, it's a lot of interesting things. Okay, anything else? I've sort of given you a lot of stuff. If I get my book published, you got to read that, because I think I'm more organized in there than I am today.
You're doing great.
But there's so much. I mean, and I loved it. I mean, going around to the grave sites and finding them. One fellow, I went all the way over to Milton Mills over there, and I had a rough description. It was a family cemetery up in the woods, and my wife said, "Yeah, you're nuts. You're never going to find it." I was lucky enough to get out of the car, and I walked up the hill, and there's this family cemetery, and there's the guy I was looking for. But most of them, they sort of spread out. Most of them are buried in the area, but some Some are buried. A couple of them ended up in California, various places. But anyways, let's go up to Brown's house up there. Have you seen the picture of that house from the History of Penacook book? Okay. And I was telling Althea that if you're ever looking at pictures, they have reprinted a lot of these town histories, and the pictures didn't come out too good. The text is fine, but I know sometimes when I wanted to take something from picture, it's terrible. And what I would do is ask them, do you have the original copy, like the Historical Society down there and the State Library? They're just a treasury of information. But sometimes they'll have the original book and they'll bring it out with the better pictures in it. But so there's a picture of that. There's a picture of Linehan's house. The second band, by the way, there's no good picture of them. I don't know why. There's not a good picture of the second Brigade band. I don't know why. There's not a good picture. But that one I had here, that's a good picture, and that's down in the Concord Historic Society, and they're very helpful down there.
Where would that picture have been taken?
Which one?
The one of,
that was taken by, I think he was a Concord photographer. I think his name was Henry Moore. I'm not sure. And it was taken down in South Carolina in February of 1862.
Okay.
And then shortly after that, by August, they phased the band out because of that, getting rid of the regiments. I mean, that was, and you stop and think about hundreds of regiments with 24, supposedly 20, not all of them, a lot of them didn't have that many, but still there was a tremendous outlay of money. And it took the government about 6 months to figure it out. I mean, it'd be nice if they figured it out, but they didn't. You know how they work. But they just couldn't. It was too big an expense, and that was the end of it.
I read that Linehan played the largest instrument.
That's not true. Yes, I know. I saw that somewhere too, and it's not true. It's not true, because the largest instrument in a Civil War band was the E-flat bass, and Linehan, I believe, played a B-flat bass, and that's not the largest. That's next to the largest. I don't want to get too much into the musical stuff. The big sousaphones that we see today were an invention that came later, but the largest brass instrument in a Civil War band was the E-flat bass. That was the bottom of the harmony. And Linehan, I think if I didn't say he played. Remember, did it say he played B-flat bass? Yeah, that's not the. I don't know. I saw that article too, and there was a lot of incorrect stuff in there, and including the link to Never's band, which isn't true, and. Then somebody talked about the music of the 3rd Regiment Band. We don't know what the 3rd Regiment Band music was. There's no record of it. The music we know about is from the 2nd Band, the Brigade Band. None of us know what the original band played. But it's easy to get confused. And what was really confusing, a friend of mine who's really good at it made a mistake. There's a D. Arthur Brown and a David A. Brown. They're not the same guy. David A. Brown is D. Arthur Brown's uncle. But when you see that, you go, So it's easy to get fouled up. Okay, so shall we go up there?
Yeah.
Are you interested in the cemetery up there? Yeah.
Sure.
You want to go up there? Your boy, he's still here. When I was your age, history was almost the last thing I was interested in. You have to be old to do that. But anyways, let's go up there and take a look at the house. You gonna walk up there?
It's just right up here, right?
Yeah.
Right past
You have to cross the bridge. It's by somewhere short of the Citgo station, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
or
right.
Maybe we could all walk. You
Before
want to
that.
walk up?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I was telling them about that ledger that's in the State Library.
Oh yeah.
And it had something to do. It had something to do with the GAR post, and it's about this tall, and it has an account of all the fellows that served from here. And I think somebody dictated, and I think D. Arthur Brown might have copied it in his own hand. It's only one copy, And it's interesting because it has a biographical sketch of everybody. This is really upscale. This is an upscale area. Yeah. That's, of course, that's the Brown House right there. The Arthur Brown. Let me cross over. I wanted to show you the. Did you see the picture of this in the History of Penacook book?
I did, yeah.
Okay. See here, that's where the wrought iron fence went in. This whole thing was surrounded with a wrought iron fence. Yep, that's where it was.
History tour. Oh, okay. You want to come in and see more?
Yes.
Yeah.
Looking at the ornate stuff and the woodwork, it's actually a little better shape than the other building. Let's come in here first.
No, I'd be
Thank
very
you.
happy to see it.
Have fun, you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right.
Getting all the generations in here.
Wow. That's a big thing when you have a house nowadays, the kind of woodwork they put in it. Look at this woodwork. This is what I remember. My gosh. You have any idea how much that would cost? Look at that woodwork.
These are beautiful.
Yeah, this is real woodwork.
Yeah.
This is, oh man.
Some of the apartments, particularly this one here, because these were the downstairs.
Right.
It's layered, 3 layers on some of them.
Yeah.
Like in what was the old dining room,
There's the old,
the brown marble, and the white marble fireplace.
is the original woodwork still in there?
Most of it, yes.
What did they have upstairs? Oh, look at it. What a house.
There's actually an apartment open upstairs if you want to see a couple of the old bedrooms.
Yes,
What
I
were
would.
original bedrooms.
Yes, I would. Look at this railing. This is real building. They don't build houses like this anymore.
Yeah, it's a little shaky, but
A little bit shaky. Needs to be tightened
it
up.
just needs new screws. I think.
Wow.
The old ones are getting a little worn away. Yeah, this is a good solid
This would have
one.
been, this room would have probably been the old nursery. Just off the bedroom. Back part of this building is service quarters.
Nice.
Yeah, look at that. Wow.
Radiators this way. It's got a round one down.
Is that original?
And
Wow.
they still work.
Oh, yeah.
They're still the summer.
There's
Wow.
still no steam in this building.
Oh,
They get those.
No. I balance these systems out. They run well.
really? Excellent. So,
Wow.
Yeah, that's
you
the-
must have, let's see.
The roof needs a
You
little
must have
repair
put
over
a-
here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That used to be the light for the hallway.
Okay.
It's been made into a bedroom over the
Okay.
years.
Okay, yes.
These are still the original doors and
Oh,
everything?
yes.
Yeah.
I've slowly been, I normally
Yeah,
take them apart.
Yeah.
We're not going to run
You
that.
can actually tell, you can see it better next door. Brass was
Right.
for common. We have solid silver in all the other ones that you get. And then you get into steel when you get into the service quarters.
But the Arthur Brown
They
was,
weren't-
he had money, a lot of
They
it.
knew where to spend the money and where not. to
Right.
spend it.
That's
This
a lot
would
of
have been an original front bedroom.
Yeah.
The closets, the ceiling's been lowered here. You can look up in that
Right.
closet and see where they go.
Now, do you know that name,
Well, the
name
ceiling
D.
used
Arthur
to be
Brown?
that
Yeah,
high.
this was his.
That's right. And he was the
The
CEO of
ceiling
the
used to be
Concord
that
Outfitters.
high.
Yep.
And now it's a little
Right
They had
over
the
the-
spinning mills, the family, so they had all the houses
Yep.
down the street.
Yep.
And of course, the Hamptons were next door.
Pretty,
And
it
Edward
goes up
had
about
that
a foot and a
house.
half.
Who was it next door?
Edward. He was the son of the dad who lived in the Greenwood.
Was he a Brown?
No, they were Amstons. They
Oh,
owned
that's
the
right. Somebody
furniture
told me
factory.
that. You're right. Okay.
They had the furniture factory on the other side, which accounts for all the beautiful trees around the other two buildings.
What a treat to come in here.
Now, these doors actually weigh a ton. I take them off sometimes. and
Thick, that's what I mean.
It takes 2 people to lift them.
Yeah.
These doubles
These were fun.
downstairs.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's an old picture.
Okay, that goes.
That's actually a picture of the Concord Axle Works.
Oh, yeah, yeah, okay.
Was it one more floor?
There's one more floor.
Attic?
It is. Come on.
What a treat.
Oh, big girl.
What a treat.
So I can just picture Linehan and D. Arthur Brown, maybe out here with their instruments, you know.
Yeah, there was a picture
Thing.
taken of that band, and I don't know. There's a slight slope. I'm wondering if it was taken here. There's a picture of this of Brown's band.
We're in the back.
Remember seeing it in there?
Yep.
In white uniforms.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm wondering where it might be here.
Wow.
What was the yellow?
That would be amazing.
I'll take another look at that picture.
Foundations there. Actually, there used to be beautiful iron.
Yeah, I know. I saw it on
iron gates, but that all disappears during World War II.
Oh, okay.
In fact, any place you see a wrought iron gate, it still exists. Like there's some in Concord, they were considered unpatriotic people.
Really?
They were bad.
Oh,
They
they had.
wouldn't give the medals.
Same
they had-
thing with anybody. If you see the old Columbia bikes,
Yeah.
the kids that owned them were considered bad kids because they
had-
did
They were
not give
taking
them up.
bikes from
They had scrap drives in World War II to come up with metal, and I mean,
If you didn't give it up,
Yeah,
you were
yeah.
shunned by your neighbors.
yeah, they had scrap drives.
You were supposed to give.
Is that your motorcycle?
Nope. No, that's one of the 10. You want to go and check the other one out?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
See, I've been trying to decide on the color here, and it's still.
I say you take as much time as I do in choosing a color.
Well, we're all for
voted
you.
down by others.
If you're doing the work, then
Come on,
it's
Ash.
votes.
Now,
You can see the original well sits underneath those staircases over there.
Okay.
Wow.
Underneath the fire escape.
Dug well.
Just inside, I have a cistern inside that still exists.
Okay.
And above it is the old heat exchanger. There used to be a stainless steel tub that went up. The steam heat would run through this exchanger, heat your water.
Wow.
Your servant would then pump the water up to a cistern on the top floor,
Right.
and you had water pressure.
Wow. Those were the
cool.
days, huh?
I'm a big shellac fan. Shellac is easy to fix.
It is.
You know, it's
These are the things I love.
yeah.
You see the
Yeah,
woodwork?
yeah. Oh, nice. Yeah, the sweep.
Yep.
Just
They
the
cut the feathers in it so you can bend it.
yeah. Nice.
You don't find that in a lot of places where they actually spent the time.
Yeah, look at this. No, it's all like.
Take a slice up.
Yeah.
I do have a top piece for this, but I take it off at Christmas and I can't remember what I did with it. I know it's in the basement.
I don't turn up.
Yeah, they're actually, they bolt right into the base.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But there's one,
Yeah, it's got
can bring
all
you to an
these-
apartment upstairs here. It's the servants' quarters. My mother's about to move in.
It's got all these neat little bits nailed onto here. Looks cool.
Oh yeah, that takes a few minutes.
I was gonna say that would be.
See, the original roof line was
Yeah, right here. Yeah.
And it was also.
Actually, I'm glad they left that as a clue. I mean,